All right, hard yarners. Today's episode, incredible. Before we get to our guest, today's episode is brought to you by alltradescover.com.au. If you're watching at home, behind our guest, do you have any sort of liability insurance for your campaigns or anything like that?
For specific events, if a venue doesn't have it, we do need to get it. And actually, one of my candidates just asked that question of me the other day of one of our teams. So there we go.
Well,
now I know who to send him to.
If you specifically the tradies we'll go with, but they definitely cover a lot of areas. Get around alltradescover.com.au. They can help you. They're not just suits. They know what they're talking about. So, and John, just a little shout out, just got named, how's this, MVP for the World Cup at the Camel Handball World Championships.
What?
Our sponsor is the number one camel handball player in the world. So
that is a claim to fame.
Oh my God, that's so good.
That's
so John,
cool.
Congratulations. Get around All Trades Cover. That's why you've got to get around him. But also this episode is brought to you by Feed. Feed, speaking of animals, animal-based supplements. It's all ethically sourced. It is locally sourced. And because it's animal-based, it's more bioavailable, so you don't just piss it out when you've taken in those supplement capsules. They've got beef liver, organ complex, collagen, honey.
That's how we're staying so useful.
Yes, exactly. And the oysters. Oysters are really good.
Zinc,
so.
bioavailable zinc.
Yep. So get around Feed. Use the code word HARDYARN, and you'll get. I'm gonna check this. I'm going to say 15% off. You get 10 or 15. It's 10 or 15%. Feeds, they're a legend. So get around Feed. Thanks so much for your support over the last 5-6 months being on board. And finally, this episode is brought to you by Goat Tape, of which I have been smashing lately. And I think, so I've been wearing the mouth tape a lot lately. And fuck. Like the other morning, I woke up and I was like, okay, this is notably the greatest sleep I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
And for the fact that has happened has made me go, right, I don't care how long goats stay on board, I'm getting on the mouth tape bandwagon. I don't care what cliche it is, a mouth tape bloody works. So
yeah, I'm gonna have to try. I actually bought some mouth tape, not these guys' brands, but I probably should. I need to get on board.
Yes, please stick to ours.
I'm like, I'm gonna get on board with the goat because this was some cheap stuff. It probably won't even work. Yeah, but sounds amazing. Right. Keen to try.
Definitely
Good on
helps.
You, goat.
Definitely
and
helps
the
with
nose. Also,
the nose helps with your when you're doing your sport and sleeping and snoring. So get involved. 35% improvement in oxygen flow. So
amazing. I need to get on that.
Mm-hmm. But thank you so much for joining us. Mellissa, what did we talk about today? We had a very pleasant conversation.
We did. It was a broad conversation. Obviously, we touched on politics. That's where I'm at right now.
Yep.
Trumpet of Patriots. Whoop, whoop. We talked, I guess, a little bit like spiritual kind of messages, trusting intuition, trusting a journey.
The COVID era,
the COVID
lockdowns,
area.
mandates, vaccination injuries, being your authentic self as a politician.
Yes, which I think is so important, what people want to hear.
Yep, mainstream narrative lies. It just covered everything that you'd want to. It was a good. Do you know what? It's a good echo chamber episode for once. We covered what a lot of our listeners would love. So
I feel like it was a really good chat, and I hope that other people get a lot out of it. I know I had some nerves, but I feel like we had it was a really good chat, and I think people will find it an interesting episode.
Absolutely nailed it. Very good episode. Very glad we have this chat, and thanks for joining us. So without further ado, let's get hard.
Welcome to Hard Yarns Podcast.
I am fucking fat.
Anything Chris White says, please disregard it.
5D is actually a state of being. It's a unity consciousness.
That was Hard Yarns with me, Frankie Rose. So I'm going to throw it over to your co-host,
Daniel Telby.
And Cameron Branch.
I would do this and then I'd gong.
Free in attendance for the millions listening at home. Let's get hard.
But perfect. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Finally This has been a long time coming, I think.
Yeah, we have been chatting for a while.
Well, you are responsible for our listeners who have loved some of our bigger episodes, connecting us with some of the, especially some of the politicians that we've had on, even getting us tickets to Tucker Carlson. You're a good egg. So,
thank you. Yeah, I was before I moved over here, I was already following you guys, and I was stoked when I reached out on Instagram and we got that chat going. And as soon as I heard about the Tucker Carlson event, I knew I had to get you guys there. And I thought this is such a great opportunity for us to meet and all be together. Rebecca Barnett, obviously Corey, you, Delby.
It's a great community we're building over here. I'll get you to move that closer to you. Yeah, perfect.
That's all right.
It's all good. It's not you. It's the fact that the female voices, whatever. They hit less with the audio. I don't know why.
Yeah. We just don't have that masculine tone.
I'm not an audio technician. Considering I edit every episode, you'd think I know more about audio, but that actually strange. I don't know if I've said this on the podcast, but we had recently Hayley Mary from formerly from the Jezebels on, and we were having a chat. And prior to her coming on, she's like, I've been listening to a few of your episodes. And my boyfriend, he's an audio engineer, so he'll be able to give you some tips on a better way to put some compression on the audio and stuff. I was like, yeah, cool, chuck him on. And it ended up being Johnny Took, who's the guitarist from DMAs. Didn't realise that I'm a massive DMAs fan, and I was like, oh shit. Weirdly, the first time I've ever felt a little bit like I don't know, I wouldn't say starstruck. Of all the people I've spoken to that I really admire and I've spoken to, for whatever reason, that was the first time I ever felt like that.
Isn't it funny how that happens? Hey, I actually worked for a country music singer before I came over here to WA. Post me losing my job with Queensland Health, which we'll go into further, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I actually started working for a country music singer who's pretty like-minded to us, actually. You should actually have him on. You guys would have the best yarn. So his name's Mick Lindsay. And, so I kind of got exposed to some of that stuff too, and it was really hard not to feel starstruck, as his tour manager, and going to these events where there's some pretty big people playing and you're like having to tell them what to do, like be on stage at this time and do all these things. And it was just wild. It was such a wild experience. I loved it.
And I guess, one of the reasons you're on, I don't know, is this a big change in direction for you, announcing as a candidate? Like that's a big thing. It's a big step. It's something people have been asking me about if I would be interested in. I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'd love to. Like, I think I can try and make some change. But then a part of me looks at what some of these politicians have to do, the hours, the out-of-hours stuff. I love my balance of being a good dad.
Yes.
I feel like that's all gone if I go down that path. So, but what... Yeah. Tell us what you're doing.
And you do so much good, obviously, like doing this. I feel like you are doing so much good outside of the system to influence the system. And I think that is just so important what you're doing. And you're obviously great at it and passionate about it. And it's going huge. So I would 100% support you to make a move in the political space. But I feel like your influence here, is just... It's incredible. I feel starstruck being here. Like we were having that conversation before we started recording. And it feels intimidating being here.
Really?
Yeah.
I love that.
So there you go.
Well, we're definitely having an impact. I heard it the other day. I went to the West Perth footy club and was watching round 2, first home game, and walk upstairs up to the bar, and I'm watching from the sort of side there, and I see this bunch of like 16, 17-year-olds. They're watching Colts. And then I hear this one kid go, isn't that the Hard Yarns? And another kid turns around and goes, yeah, it's the Hard Yarns. And that's normal. And I'm not going to pretend I don't get excited by that sort of stuff still. But this excited me more because they were young.
Yeah.
They were like 16, 17 years old. It wasn't just one of the random ones. One of them turned around and confirmed it as well, which means we are starting to reach the younger people, which is
so important,
but also scary. It's like, am I teaching them the right things? But this is the thing I think I've really realised lately. It's not my knowledge that's important because I don't like calling myself an idiot. I still think I'm educated enough on a lot of things, but it's not. And I was talking to my partner about this because I come at the questions with the guests from a almost I don't want to say a layman's terms or like a dumb person's terms, but I'm not that educated on a lot of things. So I feel like when I ask the questions, it is from a simple sort of I guess.
Well, how the everyday person wants to ask the questions, right?
Yeah, and I'm not saying the listeners at home are simple, but it means none of us know the answers to the topic. That's why we get the experts on to talk about it. And so if we're asking the questions, I'd say 8 to 9 times out of 10, a lot of the listeners at home are like, I don't know the answer either. I want to know the answer. So
well, you want to know more from someone else. And that's sort of how I feel too. Like I'm intelligent enough to know that I'm not an expert on a lot of things.
Well,
and so I'm like, well, and I'm more than willing to put my hand up and say, I don't know. I'm willing to do the research or someone who is educated in this space. Tell me, tell me more.
This is exactly why someone like a Rogan, who is, give him credit, he is still quite intelligent and he's been across a lot of things, but because he's coming at it from that similar sort of angle, if I was to listen to Huberman on Rogan, I'd get a lot more out of it than listening to Huberman's own podcast because when he's got his own experts on, they're talking a lot of technical jargon that I don't have a fucking idea what they're talking about. But when it's on, Rogan or Theo Von or these sorts of, I won't call them simple people, but like more common people with a more common understanding of all of this stuff, it makes it easier to understand because
100%.
I don't know what you're talking about when it comes to your cholesterol levels or something. Explain it to me in layman's terms so I can understand. So
and I think coming at and asking questions from a place of curiosity, has a very different vibe to it. When we're not attacking, we actually genuinely want to hear other opinions because we live in a world now where people are just craving authenticity, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think it's so easy to get caught up and lost in, there's just so many different opinions and it's really hard for people to know what's true and what's false. And I think people have become so disconnected from themselves that they struggle to have that discernment to know who's genuine and who's not. And so we get lost and caught up in all of these things. But if we can just hone in on our own beliefs and be strong in ourselves, I think it makes it a little bit easier. But certainly hearing both sides of things is great. And I love that you guys aren't, even though you have your beliefs, you're more than willing to have people on here who have different opinions, which I think is just awesome. That's what we need more of. And that's, leading into why I ended up putting my hand up to do what I'm doing because we are missing that in politics. Like it is a bit of an echo chamber and I feel like our politicians have massively sold us out to big corporations and lobbyists and they're forced to toe a party line. And therefore they're in this sort of echo chamber and, it's really hard for getting, different points of view and different voices and ideas in there because you just sort of get hamstrung. So I think the more people we can get in there to actually negotiate and be like, all right, I think if we all sat down, there's actually a lot of things that we can all agree on off the bat. So let's work on those things. Let's get some good wins on the board and then we can start working through the bigger mess. I just think that's common sense, but there just seems to be a lack of teamwork when it comes to Parliament.
I think that's by design because if we all realise we all want the same thing, and I harp on about this every episode, is that we all want the same thing, which is the best for everyone.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what side you align with, just because we disagree on the pathway there, or we've watched different propaganda, or we've been, we've been almost brainwashed to think certain ways, both ways.
Yes, both ways.
It doesn't mean we don't want what's best for the world.
Yeah.
And too often, I think the middle way, somewhere in the middle of both, is probably the best.
Yeah, and I guess I've always thought of myself as centre-right, and I suppose now people probably think I'm like far-right extremist because of my beliefs around people having, freedom of choice and movement and, freedom about, medical choices and how they raise their children, what they're exposed to. And but I've always felt that I've been, centre-right and, I can see good things from both sides and then I'm willing to kind of work from the middle. Yeah. And I just think that is, I just think that that's just more common sense. And, I've certainly been caught up in, going down heaps of rabbit holes and I've had to pull myself back and just go, what is it important to focus on? Because you can spiral. It's easy to spiral.
And that's why I do think this division is by design, is because COVID, it woke a lot of people up to what was happening, but it also divided the nation, the world, into almost two separate sort of halves.
Yeah.
And I think that was escalated intentionally because if the two sides realised they were both wanting the same thing, which was everyone to be okay.
Yes.
The quote-unquote anti-vaxxers didn't want people to be harmed by a potentially harmful, untested new vaccine that was being used en masse around the world. And then the other people were like, no, I want to protect the people that I care about. So they were all wanting the same thing. Yeah. And I think by design, this narrative of like anti-vaxxer versus pro-vax was pushed to divide instead of looking at the people who are in control, and they're the ones who are making the decisions. They're the ones who should be held accountable for their actions.
Exactly.
And instead we're pointing the finger at each other.
And that's what's still happening now with so many divisive issues, because if we keep fighting against each other, we're not banding together, are we? And looking at what the actual problem is, and it's the people who are pulling the strings. So, yeah, I fully agree. I think it is by design. And I think, we obviously have been called all kinds of things, being Trumpet of Patriots. Yes, the name is bold.
Yes, he's gone hard with that, hasn't he?
Well, actually, I have to clear up the whole that whole thing around the name. So the party was actually called, it was Country Alliance, if I remember correctly. It was actually formed in 2004 by 4 rural Victorians. And then they had a name change. In 2020, they actually renamed to the Australian Federation Party. Now, in 2021, the Trumpet of Patriots Trumpet of Patriots Party was formed. And they tried to contest the 2022 election, but they put their registration in too early, so the AEC wouldn't approve it, and it got suspended.
Okay.
And so everyone who was going to run as a Trumpet of Patriots candidate actually then had a bit of a merger or an alliance with the Australian Federation Party, and so they ran under that banner. And then Trumpet of Patriots then tried to register again, but they didn't reach their membership requirements. So Australian Federation Party actually renamed to the Trumpet of Patriots. So that's how it was formed. Everyone thinks that Clive came up with this name, but he actually didn't. So then come February 2025, after they lost their High Court battle to re-register the United Australia Party, the guys that the team at Trumpet of Patriots, they contacted Clive and said, you've got to run. Like, you're one of the only people who can obviously resource a campaign and actually get the messaging out there. So pretty much like lovely guys. So I haven't had anything to do with them, but from all accounts, like absolutely lovely guys. And they said, here, take our party and you run with it. And, the team, like Clive and the team said it was almost like, there was a higher power in there having a hand on that. Yeah. So, gives me goosebumps, like just the way that it all unfolded. But everyone thinks that we've come up with this like Trumpet of Patriots name because of the whole Trump thing. I mean, I don't know why Trumpet. I assume it's probably because they have a loud message and they want to cut through the bullshit. I mean, it turns heads, right?
Yeah.
The name turns heads. I think our policies turn more heads, so which I think is a great thing. So that's how it came to be.
I haven't looked into the policies. Are they centralised around sort of freedom of expression and
100% believing in freedom? Certainly exiting from the globalists that are pulling a lot of the strings
on the sort of libertarian style 100%, approach?
So, and certainly looking at things like being able to, addressing the housing crisis issue, which is massive here, allowing people to access 30% of their super for a home deposit, I think is a great one. And we can 100% do that. Capping interest rates at 3%. People have said it can't be done. It actually can through the Parliament can actually change the RBA Act.
Wow.
So we can 100% do that. Other countries do that. So I think that's something worth looking at. I mean, all of our policies are actually geared to tie in together so that we can have a massive impact here and change the course of our country, because a country like Australia, we should not have over 3.7 million people struggling to put food on the table. No. And we shouldn't have tent cities popping up all over the place. People can't get housing. They can't afford their rentals. They can't afford their mortgages. Well,
I noticed through COVID this, and me and Delby's commented on this, who's going to be back tomorrow?
Everyone
who's listening,
awesome.
He's back. He's doing his East Coast tour. He's done really well. It was on Sunrise yesterday. I don't know if anyone noticed. But
That's so cool.
But speaking of mainstream media and pushing narratives, what was I saying there? Oh, yeah, through that COVID era. Actually, no, I don't know where I was going with that. I got sidetracked with Delby.
Talking about housing and homelessness.
Yeah. So through that COVID era, we've noticed this, and I don't know if this is by design, by like maybe potentially, like we had heard rumours that this was criminal activity, and they were taking advantage of the homelessness and getting people to pop up on the street lights, the corners, because it seemed like out of nowhere, every single traffic light had a homeless person asking for money. And I'd never seen this, not in Australia, certainly not in Perth. And then over COVID, obviously that's fucked a lot of people, small businesses. But I just noticed, bang, like this happened straight away. It seems to have gone a little bit now. I don't know why or what's happening there, but regardless, what we did see through that COVID era was a transition where a lot of people lost a lot of money, a lot of their businesses, their families, they lost a lot. Yeah. And I think it's resulted in a lot of homeless people.
Yeah, I fully agree. So many small businesses closed down because of that. You know, and I know you guys have addressed this a lot on the show, but there's so many things just obviously didn't make sense where they allowed these big businesses to operate, you know, while meanwhile, you know, the small hardware stores, you know, had to shut their doors, but Bunnings was fine, and, you know, bottle shops could be open, but you couldn't go to the gym, and, you know, Macca's is open, but you can't go to your local cafe, or you can only do takeaways. It was just, it wasn't never about health, but I think most people can see that now. That's actually, I'm wearing a Southern Sons shirt. I don't know if you knew. Do you know the Southern Sons? They're like an Aussie band.
Are they?
Yeah,
okay.
they're around 35 years ago. They started, and they're still going strong.
Love that.
My dad's over from Queensland for a week just to come and help me with everything. And so I got to go to the concert with him on Saturday night. Yeah? Yeah, and so Jack Jones, his mum died the night before the concert. And so he just like rallied, like showed up and performed, like just he was just obviously heartbroken, and it was like Aussie spirit was on display there because they just carried him through the concert, singing the songs that obviously had a lot of memories with him. It was just amazing to see. But I wore this as sort of like a symbol because he actually stood up and he said, he was talking about COVID and the lockdowns and everything, and he's like, and I bring this up because we can never, ever, ever let this happen again. And the crowd there, it was at the Astor Theatre, you know, like majority of the crowd were in agreement. Like there was this, you know, eruption of applause of like, yes. And he's like, and I'll keep bringing it up because if we don't talk about history, it will repeat itself. And he brought it up a few times. I was like, good on you. Like there was a lot of people that were sort of trying to stand up for some rights then.
I think, we spoke about this with Rod on Friday. Like we've changed into a country of privilege. Like we're living with the privilege to be able to do this and the privilege to be able to do that instead of the right. Yeah. And that is, it was like we didn't see it happen. Yeah. In stealth.
Yeah. I guess I was already quite skeptical. I was working for Queensland Health at the time, and I was working within their executive team. And I'd one of my roles, I'd been the consumer and community engagement officer, which I just loved. Yeah. But when the COVID stuff really sort of was ramping up, I was the senior executive assistant to our health service chief executive. So he oversaw all of the health services in our area. And even when it all sort of kicked off, everyone was literally, it was sort of like a bit of a joke. And, you know, we were like, oh, everyone just needs to go down to the local park and we'll get someone to cough on everyone and we'll just get our natural immunity and get on with it. And then, you know, things started to obviously snowball from there. And I actually said to my colleagues quite early on, I was like, just you wait, there'll be a vaccination for this, and we won't be allowed to do anything unless we get it. It'll be tied to our employment, you know, because I'd already, been onto a few of the things.
Down
and I've
the
been,
rabbit holes.
Yeah. And so I was like, and they laughed. And they're like, no, they'll never do that. And I was like, just you wait.
Yeah.
And that's obviously exactly what happened. And I mean, as having been someone who's been vaccine injured before, I'd already gone down the path.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, what happened there? What sort of vaccine injury?
When I was a baby, it was actually the whooping cough vaccination. When I was a baby, I couldn't complete the schedule as a baby because of the terrible reactions that I had. And so always had obviously a bit of a sensitivity to things like that.
Yeah.
Even as a child, like would have pretty bad reactions post vaccines, and it was like, oh, that's normal. That's that's just what happens. You be unwell for a while. But I was constantly sick as a young person and as a child, like constantly was on antibiotics. Ear infections, tonsillitis. Like if somebody coughed near me, I'd be unwell, and not just like a cold for a few days. Like it really knocked me around. And then it was a flu shot that did me in my mid-20s, and I was so unwell. I didn't link it to that at the time, but then going over my medical records, I now was able to link it. I ended up having like 6 months off work. I had to rent my property out, and I moved in with my parents because I was just so unwell.
Wow.
Nobody knew what was wrong with me. I was going to all these specialists, and it was just, in the end, they just said I had chronic fatigue and I'd just have to manage it. And I was like, mid to late 20s, and I just can't accept that.
Yeah. Well, this chronic illness epidemic that we're seeing around the world, it's not reported on like COVID was, for example, which is ridiculous in itself. But it's not to say that is directly as a result from the rise in vaccinations. Yeah. I'm sure it's played some part in it, but also our health, like our food choices, what's
water,
been put in our water,
environment,
environmental factors, what's been sprayed in the air. Like it used to be, chemtrails used to be a conspiracy, and now it's just widely accepted as, oh no, this is weather modification, this is we're spraying for this and that. It's just like there are so many different contributing factors. The glyphosate that we were speaking about, like being put on our food, and the rise in chronic illness there. So I don't think it's down to one thing. I think it's down to several things. But to completely discount the role that vaccinations play, considering we are such a biodiverse community, we are all completely different. And if you are to accept this stupid idea that one medication is going to be okay for billions of people to take across the world, and they're not going to have issues with, hundreds of thousands to potentially millions of people in a variety of different ways, whether that goes from extremes of death to mild chronic illnesses, it's going to happen. Exactly. And you're fucking absolutely, I don't want to call you an idiot, but you are ignorant if you disagree that there's a contributing factor there.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And it can't be a one-size-fits-all thing. I mean, I guess I'm proof of that. I mean, and that's the thing too, is like I'm not anti anything. I mean, I'm certainly an X-factor for myself because, as soon as I sort of stopped listening to the mainstream medical advice and I started getting help from a naturopath, and I started working on my gut health, and everything changed for me. And now I'm like, my immune system is great.
We've got Dr. Sally Price on tomorrow talking all gut health.
So cool. So important.
Yes.
So important. I stopped, like the birth control pill for women. If I had have known what I knew now, I was put on that so young because I had skin issues because of the years of antibiotics to the gut health.
This whole thing of like, it's for your skin, but it's it changes your whole cycle.
Yeah.
It changes the hormones of a woman.
It changes who you're attracted to.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I know.
Like, I understand, like, have it for child, to not have a child, but to say, you should have this to clear up your skin.
Yeah. I was like 14 or 15, and the doctor, we trusted what we were told, my mum, and I, and it was like, I felt like that was the only option.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's, something I had to work through, and that was all part of my, I guess, healing journey. But it certainly contributed to, like issues that I had in terms of my mental health. I can pretty much link those to, changes in my mental health. When I was a young teenager. So I think that's something that, that women, I feel like, and girls aren't really educated enough about. I don't think it's really made clear to them that there are other options, even in terms of birth control, but that's obviously, a personal choice.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying either that, I know there's mums out there whose, babies have become really sick or have died as a result of what potentially is a vaccine preventable disease, but what's to say the mother whose baby died because of a vaccination is wrong too? We've got to meet somewhere in the middle here and let people have an informed choice, give them all of the information. And I guess that's what we stand for. We, Trumpet of Patriots, no vaccine mandates ever. We just think that is just totally wrong.
And I use my mum as a perfect example with the COVID vaccine. My mum had a near-death reaction to the COVID vaccination because of a genetic predisposition that she didn't realise she had. She was very, it was a lot easier for her to get blood clots. Now, had she known this, she wouldn't have been able to get it and she would have got an exemption, or she could have had a different one, or whatever the case would have been. But because the mandate was enforced and there was no enforcement of doing this genetic testing, it's the same when it comes to, in my opinion, it should be the same when it comes to the child vaccine schedule. Now, for some people, they would say there's no benefits to having it. They're on the full against it. I am of the idea that I would love for there to be some medications that are safe, that have been tested, and they're going to do what's best for us. But firstly, we need to do some genetic testing on every individual to make sure they're okay to get it, because that's the perfect example. My mum having that reaction could have been completely averted had they also mandated genetic testing prior to vaccination.
Yeah, or just, having a bit more of an informed choice. And I mean, things like that, obviously, you wouldn't know unless you did do certain amounts of testing. I mean, obviously, I was working in the health space, but obviously had some differing opinions on the medical system. And, I would love to see, like Western medicine and holistic medicine, like combining in a hospital. Do you know, wouldn't that just be amazing?
Well, this is what, like Eddie Enever, who was supposed to be on last week, but he's had to cancel, but he's coming on next Monday.
Yeah, awesome.
He combines the two, for his cancer treatments. He's like, there's a role with chemotherapy. Of course, it's life-saving for a lot of people, but it's fucking destroying as well. So there's ways that you can heighten the what. Yeah. Anyway, you can go back and listen to the episode we've done with him. He does a whole episode on Eddie Enever, and it's those sorts of, it's a combination of like, okay, this is a holistic approach mixed with modern medicine.
Yep, and that's what we need more of, and less of this sort of divide. But I think it's really important to sort of be looking at both perspectives there. And I guess being in that health space, I did talk to a couple of doctors that I trusted, 3 of them, and they all said that the vaccine was both not only risky for myself but unnecessary because of young, fit, fitter than obviously a lot fitter than and of pretty good health, so it really was unnecessary for me. But because of the stricter TARGI guidelines, they couldn't give me an exemption even though they wanted to, because then they would have been reported to APRA and then they risked their careers by doing so it put me in a tough position, because I'd spent years building up my career, and I was like proud of the position that I'd gotten to, and I loved my job and I loved my team and my boss, who was just an incredible mentor to me. So it was really hard, but everything in my gut was like, you cannot do this. You cannot. So, because I was grappling with the idea, like, do I just do it? And, I was lucky that my family supported me, and, none of them got it, and all of my friendship, most of my friends were like-minded as well. So had I been alone though, like a lot of people were, and I had not had family or friend support in making that decision, I don't know where I would have ended up. And then that actually led me to my first step into the political space, because prior to that I'd never taken an interest in politics ever. My dad used to help me know who to vote for, and we were never a major family party. I never voted for the Greens because my dad was always not into the Greens, but like more the minor parties or Nationals too, because my dad actually grew up on a farm here in WA in Central Wheat Belt in Dowran, so all of his family are still based here, but he was Army, so we moved he moved around a bit, obviously. But when I was a baby, I was born up in North Queensland, and then we moved to Toowoomba in Queensland, which is where it was my hometown.
Yeah, we all know that because there's a racetrack there.
He's probably been to Wheatwood. It's a big race in Toowoomba. Carnival of Flowers is great too. So that was how I actually got my sort of first step into the political space. Was I'd been stood down from Queensland Health. They wouldn't let me onto the campus. I got an email even just saying, come and return all your stuff, but you're not allowed to go on the campus to do so.
Why did you have to step down?
They stood everyone down who didn't get the vaccination. It was quite disgusting. So Carnival of Flowers, if you know Toowoomba, there's a flower, food and wine festival in September. It's a huge thing. It's like a 3-day event in the park where people are just, there's live bands, there's stalls, there's like free-flowing wine. So everyone's just drinking in the park, listening to tunes, whatnot. It was like 9 o'clock on a Saturday night. We got an email from the Director General of Queensland Health telling us that this mandate was in place and that we had to obviously get a vaccination by this date. And I was just like, that's just, gross to drop that bomb on people on a Saturday and there's no one to talk to, obviously the next day being a Sunday.
Yep.
And so that's sort of how the whole thing kind of went down. And so we had a certain date by where we had to get the vaccination. There was actually a huge amount of people at Queensland Health who didn't want it, who didn't feel comfortable with it, just wanted a bit more time to just see what was going to happen. And then obviously they knew that, so they pushed it on to everyone. And there was quite a big group of us that stood strong and didn't have it. And then so we got stood down. I had so they got stood down. I said I'm happy to sign a waiver to say that I accept the risks, but that wasn't an option. And when they stood us down, they didn't even let us work from home. So I was like, this is wrong. This is a taxpayer funded. You're paying me to stay home. I'm happy. Like I could have done a lot of my job from home. But we were stood down for quite a while on full pay because our union was supporting us as well. I had to actually resign to run in the federal election in 2022.
Wow.
My position, but I think it was about 5 months that they stood us down for.
Wow.
Before they actually started sacking people or putting them on to leave without pay.
It's such a crazy time that was.
It was wild. It feels like a weird dream. Even running in the election then, it was a lower house seat. I look back and I think, did that actually happen?
Now I like to think I'm a resilient person, and I am. I'm a very strong, resilient person, and the anxiety that it brought me. Obviously, I had other things going on, but I'd never had an anxiety attack.
Yeah,
and then this idea of losing everything. And then it snowballs. It goes even worse because you don't know. You start to get scared.
Yeah.
And you're like, if I don't have this, am I going to lose access to my own fucking daughter?
Yeah.
Am I going to, like, where does this go?
Where do they draw the line?
And because we were isolated as well, in lockdown, some days you're by yourself.
Yeah.
You have
You're ruminating.
no idea. I'm sitting here going, I'm going to have to lie. I'm downloading fake passports to try and be able to access general social connection. And I'd never experienced anything like that for someone who I am a strong, resilient person. And so if I was having those sorts of anxiety attacks and those feelings of disconnection, I can't imagine what people who were maybe not as resilient or maybe weren't as didn't have such a supportive network around them.
It was awful. That was the absolute best thing to come out of the election because I was happy to put myself out there. I was in a non-clinical role, so it was a lot easier for me, I guess, to speak out on behalf of some of our health community because, the doctors and nurses, if they did, it was literally career suicide. And, it's funny how the universe is always listening because I was already starting to think, I don't think that this aligns for me anymore. Like I was already starting to think, I think it's time for me to leave, before I got forced into the decision. And then obviously the universe took that as a sign to be like, okay, well, here's your chance.
Yeah.
And so we were already, quite active in that space before I decided to run for United Australia Party. It was one of those things where by doing that, we just found this incredible community of people, like we were saying before, how you're building an amazing community. That's what came out of the election. Like it was just like, it's still beautiful to see. We still help organise community events now. Once a month, there'll be like 40 people show up to a dinner as a result of that election campaign. Do you know what? The seat that I was running in was the second safest Liberal seat in the country. So we were always up against it. But the fact that all of these people who felt alone were connected and now have formed these lifelong friendships, like that was just amazing. And the mateship that happened. So we had, it was insane. Like I actually became quite good friends with the One Nation candidate that was running in our area, and also the Australian Federation Party candidate who was running at the time. We teamed up because we're like, do you know what? If one of us can make an inroad here, that is a win. Yeah. And so, we would share signs amongst each other, and we would, go out and put up each other's signs, and our volunteers were helping put up all of our signs and handing out flyers and how to vote cards. And doing all of that, like it was teamwork, and we were trying to show that, you know what, the minor parties, we can unite. Like we are doing this for the good of the country. We're not doing this for ourselves.
Yeah.
And that was beautiful to see. Even, you know,
that is the positive, isn't it?
That was so positive. It was such a cool experience. And even there was some independents running, and they obviously had a preconceived idea of the kind of person that I was based on mainstream media.
Yeah.
And they got to know me, and even they were like, oh, you know, we thought you were just this, you guys were just these nutters. But
that's why I'm no longer asking policy when I have politicians on. It's who's the person.
You know, vote for the person. That's so true.
Because you can get a good idea of what they're going to be like with their policies by the type of person they are.
100%. And that was, I guess that was what really shone through with that election campaign. And, you know, when I moved over here to Western Australia, I was happy to sort of leave that behind, because it does take a toll. Like, campaigning is hard, and listening to people's like awful stories, it takes a toll. It takes a lot to get over that and to not carry that with you. And I've spent a lot of time trying to release a lot of the things that, you know, came up as part of that. So I certainly didn't expect to be doing this again. Yeah. But here we are. You know, it was and I know I can talk to you about this, and your listeners probably resonate as well. It sort of came about. It was only a few weeks ago where I was starting to I felt like I was a bit lost. I didn't, you know, I was trying to build a business. I was working for my friend Ash, who I think you'll have on at some point, doing some subcontractor work for her. She's a neurophysiologist. So just amazing information I've learned about nervous system regulation. And that's probably maybe a conversation for another day. But,
that's we organised that for like July or something.
Later in the year. Hopefully she can get here in person.
That
we're sort of waiting for that to happen, because that will just be an incredible conversation.
Yes.
But I felt like there was something more I should be doing, and I literally put that out there. You know, you could say, you know, pray to God, the universe, you know, insert your thing here.
Yeah.
I put it out there, and it was literally 3 days later, I got a text message from a different minor party, like absolute legends of people, saying, hey, have you considered running for the Senate in WA?
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, I don't have another campaign in me. Not keen. And it was that same day, later in the afternoon, I got contacted by someone that I'd worked with in United Australia Party, and now obviously Trumpet of Patriots, because they're an alliance.
What's the
same message? Like, hey, I know you're in WA now. Have you considered this? And I thought, all right, is this what I asked for?
Well, from asking for a friend, what's the process like? What's even involved?
Well, I had to apply still. There's still an application process. You have to nominate to be a candidate. But obviously I'd work with them. They knew me. They knew my character, knew what kind of person I was and what I stood for. And like, they know that I don't have hidden agendas. I literally just want to do good in the world. Yeah. So I got this message, and then I got another message from someone else the next day, and I was like, oh, you know how you get these things where it's like the gut thing is like, okay, well, I asked for this, but I'm not ready. Like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah, you want it. Here it is.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, you know, the growth doesn't come when you stay in your comfort zone, right? So I was like, all right, I'll go through the process at least and submit the nomination form. My partner and I had just booked a holiday, so this all happened. We had this holiday booked for months, and it all happened right before then. So it was just a rush job. I'm literally doing it the night before. I'm trying to pack and everything. And I was like, all right, we'll just see what happens, and I'll think about it. But there's no sort of final decision on what I want to do here. I changed my mind, the poor guys, like multiple times. Yeah. And then obviously I'm fully committed now. But that's you do have to apply, and you know the party executive then go through all the nominations and select candidates from there.
So from there, what are you doing? Like, are you out campaigning? Are you like are you looking at what your party's policies are and going, okay, well, look, do you know what? I don't quite agree with this one. Maybe we can tweak this, or is it you just have to stick with what they're doing, or what's like? I'm. Again, asking for a friend.
So last time I ran in a lower house seat, which was quite different, but this time I'm our lead Senate candidate. So it's a lot about supporting our team as well, so our other Senate candidates that are running in WA. And also our lower house candidates is just helping them get their campaigns sorted, you know, helping them contact all of their members, organising events so that they can meet them in person. organising volunteers to hand out how to vote cards and things like that. Also, obviously talking with head office about any communications they need to know about. Helping with our social media campaign. And it's a lot of ad hoc sort of stuff. Like, I'm glad that I've had that sort of experience, my previous work experience, because it's definitely helped me to kind of get really organised. So definitely campaigning. I mean, we've only got a couple of weeks now until the election pre-poll starts. I think it's the 24th of April, so early voting.
Do you have to be tactical as well? Do you have to go, is it, because as much as we don't like it, people will see one part of what you're campaigning with and go, oh, I like that, that's okay, I'm voting for them because of that. Or do you just go, look, this isn't about like these emotional triggering points that you can cling to as a reason to vote for that person. This is about just being on the side of good.
Exactly. It is. It's so much about being on the side of good. And I mean, I think our policies are good. I probably am somewhere in the grey area a little bit more with some things. Just I like to approach things with compassion and curiosity. Yeah. So certainly not divisiveness. And I mean, we're not here to divide, but I guess, people are putting out there that we're trying to be divisive. That's not the intention at all. It's let's just treat everyone as equals. We don't need to be putting labels on people and have all of this divide. So, I mean, I think our policies are good. A lot of them are ones that we ran with under United Australia Party banner before. And a lot of the things are the things that we tried to warn people about 3 years ago. Like the interest rates is a prime example of that when, we had them on the news, the RBA and the Liberal Party at the time, speaking that interest rates aren't going to go up, and there was all these incentives for people to buy homes and build during COVID and all of that. And we were saying they are, once this election is over, you just wait. The interest rates are going to go sky high, and people are going to struggle to make ends meet, and they will lose their homes. So obviously, I fixed my interest rate at the time, but I just came off it earlier this year, and gosh, there was some nights where I laid awake thinking, oh my God, like how am I going to make this work now that I have to pay like an extra $800 a month that I knew it was coming, but it was a big hit. So so I guess I agree with our policies, or I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But the beauty that I have of running with Trumpet of Patriots is that it's like we're an independent, but we just have the backing of a party that's able to support our campaign and help us. Because one of the first things I said to them when I ran last time was, all right, well, I'm obviously here because I don't believe in towing major party lines. So I want to know that I have freedom of conscience and I can, vote with that and with what people want. And obviously our policies are our policies and I agree with them, but I don't want to be controlled, that's not what this is about. And they were like, then obviously I got the green light there. So, I mean, if you follow Senator Ralph Babette, you can see that, he's not being controlled. He says what he thinks, So I think that's the beauty of what we're doing here. Yeah.
And I think that when you see people like that, now, obviously, the extreme version is Trump or is a Clive Palmer. They're the extreme versions of it. And when you see that, it's uncomfortable to see it for the first time. You're like, oh, politicians have never spoken like this, and they've never been so upfront and joking and being dicks to people. And like, you've not seen this. So it's a bit of
it's a slap in the face for people.
Well, and it's just an adjustment, I think, as well. And it just like... when things are going to change, again, we'll use Trump as an example because that's a global thing at the moment. But like, this is uncomfortable for a lot of people. The change that he's putting, whether you like what he's doing or not, this is where it's going. You can see what he's doing. It's easy enough to see what he's doing. If you want to win, like investment wise, or if you want to get the leg up on everyone. Unfortunately, whether you like him or not, he's in charge. He's pulling the strings. You have to start to go. You have to make your economic decisions based on what he's going to be doing. And some people are so upset with what's going on and what he's doing that they still just stand staunch and they'll lose everything because of it. And that is an example of like why change is uncomfortable to people. Some people will go, I'm not changing, and then they'll get left behind. And for massive change requires some radical changes.
Yes.
And that's what we're seeing in the world at the moment. Now, if we have someone like Clive Palmer or himself or these sorts of candidates that maybe want to stir things up and change things up a lot, it's going to be uncomfortable for Australians at first because we're stuck in our old ways. And then when we have been pushing for change for fucking decades, and when it happens, we'll complain about it because it's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
But there will be a discomfort era, and then we will address what's happened. We will start to acclimatise to what the new way is, and we'll move forward.
There's light at the end of the tunnel. You've just got to go trust the journey, trust the process. It is going to be uncomfortable. But I think for me, like losing my job over, like standing up for my values showed me that if you want to see change, you have to be that change.
Yeah.
So
that's a tough one, that one.
It is
That is tough to embody.
Yeah. And it's not easy. Doing this is not easy, which is why I said I don't think I have another campaign in me. Because to put your head up like this, even as someone who's building a small business, we've always been taught you don't talk about politics and you don't talk about religion, and so for me to like stick my head up and be like, hey,
this is who I am.
What I think. It's definitely really uncomfortable. And you get a lot
just
of hate.
socially, yeah.
And it's like, are they gonna now are they gonna shun me from the local space, or do they know me as a person? So I hope not.
And the scale that I've been experiencing it lately, the bit of the anxiety in meeting people that they'll, and I don't know if they know me, but then when they come up and say, I've seen your stuff on Instagram or something like that, and then instantly my first thought is like, all right, do they like it or do they not?
I know.
And because it's on a bit of a mass scale, I start to get a little bit of anxiety. You know everything about me and I know nothing about you, if they watch or listen. And because I'm very open about what I think and feel. And so, or my friends, if they've seen our clips, and I'm like, what if they don't agree with me? And then you catch up with them at a barbecue and you're still best mates. So it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It's like, this is my opinion. It doesn't make me a bad person.
Exactly. And I just think if people were to have and that's the thing, is like setting some boundaries around that too, because I'm always up for an open debate. I love to hear the other side of the story because, I'm firm in a lot of my beliefs, but I was also firm in beliefs that are now the opposite to what I believe. Do you know what I'm saying? So, I'm certainly not opposed to changing my mind. Or seeing the grey area, because there is so much grey, and and I think that's a great thing about having some opposing views. But I'm certainly not going to tolerate people being disrespectful, or that some of that online hate and trolls and things like that. Like that's not. I mean, it's part of the parcel, but it's not easy. And I'm a sensitive person. I'm not going to say that I'm not. So it it certainly taught me to have a tougher skin. But got to let a lot of it go and just focus on the good.
Definitely been in online battles before. And you fall into the trap. I'm getting a lot better at just leaving it now.
Yeah.
A lot better.
Not every comment deserves a reply.
Exactly. But sometimes I catch myself. I'm about to reply to something. I'm like, why are you doing that? Who cares?
Yeah, I love what you said after you spoke to Tyler Tolman. You're like, well, what if they're right? And, having that, approaching it more with compassion and just, focusing, I guess, on that nervous system sort of regulation stuff, and
it's helped.
And not letting it affect you, and coming at it from a different perspective. Or even if they're just hating on you, just thinking, well, do you know what? Like, there's obviously something that's happened in their life to give them, for them to have such a strong belief that they feel the need to come and say whatever they've said. And so just, I guess, approaching it more with compassion rather than anger makes it a bit easier to cop it.
And to their experience, they're correct as well.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is everyone is seeing everything through their own lens and their own filter and their own life experience. So that's why I certainly welcome and I'm happy to have those conversations. And if I'm wrong, I'm happy to say that I am. I mean, obviously, I feel like I'm on the right path here, and I don't think that a lot of what we're saying is wrong. I think it's just common sense, and I think that's what we're really wanting to get back to in here, is not have that echo chamber in Parliament. And I would love. I mean, obviously, one of the major parties is going to form government.
Yeah.
I hope that it is a minority government, and I hope that the people can see people like myself and people from Jared Rennick's party and, from One Nation and some of the other really good like Family First parties and things like that. Like, I hope that some of those people, they do get elected in spots all around the country, and we can have those voices in there where they have to come to us to negotiate. And the Senate is pretty much the bullshit filter, I think, for things getting passed. So let's get some more bullshit filter people in there so we can stop some of this stuff that's getting rammed through.
Well, the one thing that's a little upsetting is seeing that Malcolm Roberts and Rennick have to run against each other.
I know.
And you're like, hey, I mean, whether or not you agree with both of them, and there's bits and pieces from both sides that you might not agree with or you strongly agree with, but they're very staunch in their discernment and questioning of these things that have been rammed down our throats lately. Yeah. And now the fact that we're going to lose one of them is kind of upsetting.
It is really upsetting. I really hope it doesn't come to that. I really hope that the people in Queensland, can save both of their spots.
Yeah. Is it possible?
It's a tough battle. It is possible if we help people understand voter education.
Okay.
Use that preferential voting system.
Yeah.
And use it wisely. So we can't. I honestly believe that we can. It's just how we reach all of those people to know how to vote and what order to put people on a ballot. Obviously, you've got to pick one. And we've got great Senate candidates running in Queensland as well. So, it 100% can be done, but we just need the numbers.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. It's a numbers game.
But
I know both of those men personally, and and I've known them for a while now, and they're really good people. I believe that their hearts are in the right place. My interactions with them,
I got a good vibe off both of them.
Yeah,
having chats.
Really genuine. I still talk to Malcolm's wife. Like, she messages me all the time. She's so lovely.
And even people like broadband. And putting up that bill for the against or to repeal the no jab, no pay. Yeah. These sorts of people, like having a chat to him at the great debate, and he was in the room there and had a quick 5-minute chat. And what a fucking gem of a human that guy is. Like, he just wants what's best for everyone.
And that's when it comes back to, again, how we were saying before, that yes, you look at the party, but you've also got to look at the person too, of who you want representing you, because even though, I'm not a major party supporter, there is actually some really good people even within the Liberal Party.
Rennick was a perfect example.
Exactly. I mean, obviously they shafted him, and so he's now running independently, but you have got to consider the person. But I would just say, the minor parties really need your support. Even, put us in those first few columns, because even just to help with the funding, because the major parties, another thing they did at the end of last year was they gave themselves a pay rise. So they normally, I think it was $3.50 per first preferential vote that they get once you get over 4% of the vote. And now they get, it's $5.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that goes a long way, doesn't, to keep supporting their campaign. And obviously there was changes in the electoral reform rules there as well, which makes it very hard next election for anyone to compete with them. So I think they're running scared. They know that the majority of the population, if you voted Labor last time because you were unhappy with the Liberal government, but now you're unhappy with Labor, well, what are you going to do? You're not going to, I would hope you're not going to switch back to the blue because they failed you the first time. So, look, there's a lot of other options out there. And even just by making sure they don't get all of that funding is helpful. But obviously, we would love people to consider putting a number one in column D.
We
Senate.
We look at I think the last election results, and it was 1 on 30% of the vote. So
70% of people
did not vote. That's exactly. So that does show that we are seeing a change, and I would suggest it's going to be higher this one.
I would too. I think just from what my team are reporting back to me, they're saying that they are being received quite positively, which is awesome. I mean, I guess it's hard to know. You never know what's going to happen, but I feel like there is just a general, across Australia, people are unhappy and they're looking for another option. And there's a lot of good options out there. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of Madison King. She's running for Jared's Party Over Here People First. She's the lead Senate candidate.
Over here.
Over here. And so I reached out to her and she messaged me back. She called me on Friday night and we had a great chat. And it's like, same thing again, you know, we're not on the same team per se, but we are as a whole, in the fact that our vision for Western Australia and the Australian people is so aligned. And she's like, I want to help you because, do you know what? I've been so resistant to TikTok. I'm a millennial. I'm nearly 38. And I was like, I don't want another platform. Yep. I'm not interested. And her following on TikTok is huge.
Yes.
So she offered to help me. And I'm like, that is what you are voting for when you vote for people like us is cohesion and collaboration.
Well, you can clip up any of these clips as well and use them like go for it. But I think, the modern way to reach people is through social media.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that can be abused and it can be twisted. We're guilty. Some of our clips leave out context, and so it can leave you feeling and thinking a certain way. So it is difficult to navigate that. But, we're getting better at choosing our clips and how we post them and what we're doing. A big part of me was very concerned about this divide that we were creating or the fighting and the arguments that were in the comments. Now I've just said, well, I have no control over people and what they think and do. I can only do what I can, and that's question things and be curious.
Exactly. And if, hand on your heart, you've got good intentions, then how people perceive your message is not for you to control, because again, they're going to see things through their lens, their filter, their experience. So all you can do is, be genuine and authentic about what you put out there. And it was actually really interesting. It was I think that podcast you did with Conrad from Punters Politics, when you were really in the thick of grappling with how you had all this internal conflict about what you were going to do, and it seems like you've gotten a lot firmer in that now.
I was very really torn. Good. I didn't know what to do. I was even considering, do I just stop doing the podcast? I don't know what to do. I love doing the podcast, but I was just, am I making things worse? It was a big internal conflict. And then I did the episode.
Tyler?
No, I did the episode with Tyler, but I did the episode a day after I had been given, I was really considering shit. I was like, what am I going to do? And then Rebecca Barnett contacted me saying...
Because she's a gem of a human, isn't she?
Fucking incredible. She sent me a message saying, Sal Grover's in town. I can set you up for a chat. It's like, let's get it done. I was about to go on holiday, but I was like, no, let's get this done. I'll tick the box and then I'll
that out before Thailand.
And I'll just and I'll either post it when I get back or I'll post it before I leave and forget about it. And in the conversation, I went, no, something clicked. And I went, no, these are the chats.
Yeah.
They're the one.
Thought-provoking.
Yeah. They're questions that we want to know the answers to. And also, I won't be silenced by someone because they disagree with me.
Yeah.
And I think
self-censorship isn't good, is it?
And that's exactly what it was. I was like, I'm self-censoring myself.
Yeah. Your voice is important.
Exactly. And it's not just me. It's self-censoring the people that we get on.
Yeah.
And the platform that we've created here. So that was a big moment for me talking to Sal.
Point.
It went, no, fuck these pricks.
Yeah, exactly.
Do not be silenced.
Yeah.
Say what you want to say. Be authentically yourself. And come back stronger. And I went to Thailand motivated. I was like,
is that how you climb those temple steps?
I was like, I am coming back fucking firing. And I
good for you. And look, it's paying off, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So things are starting to.
Yeah, I think once you get really clear in that and you self-center, people are really attracted to that.
The internal conflict was huge.
It's awful. I mean, I understand. I'm like that too, and I often find myself questioning and sitting there and thinking, well, am I wrong? Am I approaching this in the right way? What is the alternate view? And my partner's really good at doing that with me. He loves to play devil's advocate, even though we're aligned on pretty much everything, which is really good. But he will play devil's advocate for me, and he will ask me questions and be like, have you thought about this or this? And
that's good.
Ash is great too. She's been great for me to bounce things off in the past as well. Because
Delby does it in the podcast, he does very well of going I agree, but
yeah, exactly. But have you considered this?
Yeah.
And so I think that's really good and that's healthy, and because we do genuinely care, and that's what it comes back to. We do genuinely care, and obviously when it comes to the woke ideologies and whatnot of how they've been labelled. I mean, my thoughts on that is that I just don't think that it's appropriate for our children to be exposed to that, and I think it's confusing because growing up is confusing enough already. I think we've all gone through like a weird phase in high school, right? Like, but at least if it's a goth phase, you can clean off the black nail polish and stop dyeing your hair, right?
Exactly.
And dress differently or whatever once you've done your phase and you're experimenting with who you are. And I don't think that changes. I wasn't really that secure in who I was until I hit my 30s, you know? So I think that's, I just want to protect children's innocence, and I don't think that is extreme to feel like that. But I have so much compassion for people who feel like that uncomfortable and in their bodies, and that's how I just think, that just be so awful to feel that uncomfortable in your body. And so I have compassion for that, but I just think that it has gone too far. I mean, one of our candidates, he's a proud gay man, and he's like, I'm not comfortable with this movement either because it's causing more divide. And
well, I was really happy that we were able to have a chat with Dana Pham, and like we got very lucky because Dana is very conservative.
Yeah.
And is not the screaming lunatic version of what we see in the street sometimes. So very, I guess, there's a lot of discernment in what Dana says. And then also doesn't think that gender theory should be in schools, doesn't think that biological men should be playing in women's sports. So like, using logic and common sense, but this isn't the common way that we see, people in that trans community or allies of that community, they're not speaking like that.
And I feel like it's kind of the allies who are pushing it a little bit
more,
Like and I mean, I could be wrong, but that's my thoughts on it. But I think, seeing that with compassion and being like, okay, well, what's really the underlying reason why you feel this uncomfortable in your body, that you feel the need to chop something off or, undergo these procedures or take these puberty blockers that changes you forever. I mean, you just subscribe to yourself to be a big pharma customer for life too. And, there's a lot more at play here than that. And then I was reading something the other day where it was where it spoke about how a lot of people who are struggling with their with that sort of thing, like their gender, have actually undergone, or have experienced trauma, whether that be in the way of sexual violence or, when they were children or, and I mean, I don't know, I haven't seen the statistics on that. It was just something that I read the other day, and I thought, well, maybe we actually just need to be addressing the underlying traumas of why this is coming up for people, and maybe it's actually just a trauma response of I don't feel safe in this body because somebody has violated me, and maybe by feeling like if they could change their gender, that would maybe allow them to feel safe. But
correct.
What if it doesn't, and
it won't be that for everyone, but I'm sure that's a big
100%. I'm
part in a lot of
definitely
people's
not
thoughts,
saying that it is, that for everyone, because I believe that 100% is some really genuine.
But all these areas
out there, but
they require nuanced discussion, and you can change your mind on certain issues. Like a perfect example is I used to be vegetarian for 6 years, and I did it because of my health initially. Now realizing, one, that was probably the worst thing I could have done for my health, but two, making that move also forced me into this. Not forced me. It created this idea of empathy for animals, and then I actually became more attached to that. Was the reason I stayed vegetarian. And even when my health started to suffer, I was like, no, I like that I'm being better for the animals. And then I found out certain truths about that, so you change your mind on that. And then there's still a part of me, for example, with this keep the sheep, like I'm still empathetic towards the rights of an animal and how they should be treated. But I understand that we've been told lies, and the conditions that they're in certain areas are not always truthful. So you went down to see the Keep the Sheep community the other day. So
I did, yeah. So we went. There was a few of us from my team that were there on Saturday that went along to the barbecue, and it was something that I saw. It's obviously a big issue in WA and for our rural communities at the moment. So I wanted to look into it for myself because I'm a huge animal lover. Like my business is about animals. So, I've fostered for the RSPCA and things like that in the past. And, my family is huge animal lovers, like rescuing injured birds and all of the rest of it. So, so I was like, well, I can't really get behind something if I feel like the conditions for the animals are awful.
Yeah.
And so I started looking into it more. And yes, I think there has been some exporters who haven't done the right thing.
Yes.
And this is how a lot of this came about. But, you can't punish everyone for the issues of others. Like that is the core thing that needs to be addressed here.
Correct.
And I think I think a lot of these like sort of city activists are putting these policies into place that are actually just so destructive for our rural communities. And it's not just about the sheep, it is about the wider impacts that it has. It impacts vets in those rural communities who, that's their business. Feed, people who provide feed for the animals, shearers. There's just so many other positions and jobs that are tied to this thing, even like truckies and diesel mechanics and things like that who are living in these rural communities and providing these services. And their families live there, their kids go to school in these communities. And once that is taken away from them, they have to move somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's, it's just the destruction of our small towns. They don't have funding then for schools. And then that's the end, everyone shuts up their shops and
if we start moving towards that factory farming system, we take away
so
any
worse.
Possibility of regenerative farming being a thing of the future, and the families that are affected by it, and the people who understand the land and how to work it and know what they're doing, like we're losing those people.
The family farm is so important because they love their land is their livelihood, and it's for a lot of them it's been passed down a generation. So that there is a lot of history attached to that, and that means something. And I read something the other day, and I don't know how true this is, but it was in the States where they were talking about banning Roundup as like the main sort of the weed chemical, and providing grants to support regenerative farming and getting behind our farmers. And so I haven't fact checked that. It was just one of those things that pops up, and it wouldn't be so surprising if that is the way they're going, but I'd love to see that here.
I really do hope that's the case, and providing subsidies to help the farmers maybe not have to use glyphosate and Roundup and these sorts of things.
Exactly.
But then again, someone has also made me aware of the fact that once you using subsidies and you're taking money and grants from the government,
if
then
there's strings attached,
correct.
That's a problem too. I agree. So I think that obviously we need some voices in Parliament who can make sure that these things, are fair, and that it's not like some of the subsidies that we see being handed out at the moment that are just big scams and wealth transfers, in my opinion. And then we can't go ahead and just ban something without a good alternative either, obviously. So we can't be gung-ho about these things, but I think it's really important, and just supporting the family farmers is huge. If you go and look in your fridge, take out everything that comes from a farm, doesn't really leave much left, right?
No,
so
that's right.
If we don't support them, we don't eat.
And I'm beginning to make a move, and I'm doing it with my daughter as well, and my partner and me, and it's hard not to fall back into old traps of processed foods, easy pick me up and go foods. But I'm making a big move towards whole foods and trying to be as clean as I can with my diet. I do fall into traps. I'm not saying I'm perfect. Like it does happen, but even if we start moving towards these factory farms, and then your duopoly Coles and Woolies and where they get their meat from, and we're not getting the best quality meat. We're not getting the best quality vegetables that have been in
cold store
with how much preservatives chucked on them to keep them going for 2 years, or so we're not getting fresh food. Like we're
There's
not
no
going to
nutritional
markets.
value
Exactly.
in that.
So I'm very conscious of all of these decisions that I'm trying to make. But it's very easy to fall into the, Woolies is open till 9. I've got to pop down and go get some stuff. And
it is easy, and especially with the cost of everything now. It's so... I would love if we could just eat organic in our household, but it's the cost factor. It just it makes it really hard. And I love to cook. I was joking before I did this Senate thing that I'm just like, I just want to, I want to build my business. I want to bake sourdough for my family and be left the heck alone. And I feel like the government intrusion has just crept in so much, and that cost of living is just, I'm like, I can't sit by anymore and read these awful stories about these mums who, like they're grappling. They don't want to have to go back to full-time work because they want to be able to be there to help raise their kids, and they don't want to miss important things. But
that's been demonised in itself.
Oh, I know.
Like,
it makes me so sad.
And that's not to suggest that women, and I shouldn't have to say
should
that.
Be, yeah, exactly. That's not what we're saying.
No, and like women can have careers and be career-driven if that's what they want to do and if that's what they're inclined to think and feel. But it's
about choice though, isn't it?
Yeah, the demonisation of a mum wanting to stay at home and raise their child, that's just as bad.
Exactly. Or even if the mum, if the dad wants to stay home, we shouldn't be.
Well, let's go. Yeah, no, I agree.
We shouldn't, I just think it's so wrong, that, families are in a position now where they're forced to put their kids into care. Because they can't possibly survive on one income. Like, that's not the Australia that I grew up in. Like, we were really lucky that my mum worked for, a portion of my schooling years, but then she was home with us, and I just appreciate that so much. And that was her, her choice. And that's, again, don't hear what I'm not saying here, but it needs to be able to be a choice. And what's more important than raising our future generation, right? I think that's important.
Yeah.
And I've got 2 stepsons, so that's important to me.
Now, if you find someone with those values, generally they might be more inclined to also be the mum that potentially wants to look into vaccination status or what they're doing with their child's vaccine schedule. Yeah. And if some of them choose to go, no, I'm going the natural route, which is, look, I'm just going to put them in the category, they probably would fall in that category. If that's the sort of I guess the I don't want to say that's the role that they're trying to choose, but they're going to traditional values.
Yeah, that's important to them.
And exactly. And if they fall into that category and then they're then withheld welfare and made more difficult to be able to do that by a government. We are the only government in the world that withholds welfare if they want to go a natural route and they don't want to have a medical intervention. That's fucking disgraceful. And we talked about it last week as well. But
I think it's so disgraceful too. And I guess I'm in a heap of different mums groups, and a couple of the mums groups I'm in is obviously people who are more in that space. And it's really hard for them. Like, they're really grappling with it, and they're like, how can I support my family? Like, my husband's working massive hours, and we're trying to keep food on the table here. It's so expensive. Our rent's going up or our mortgage is going up. But I want to be able to instill the values that are important to us in my children.
Correct.
And, and then the other thing, I guess, that brings, when you're forced to have to work as well, is you don't have time for a lot. You've only got 2 days on the weekend, and it's, washing, shopping, meal prepping, cleaning, like kids' sports, all of that. I think it's really hard. And again, don't hear what I'm not saying. It needs to be a choice, but I think it's, we're just at a point now where Australia, we shouldn't be like this. We're so mineral and resources rich that our citizens really shouldn't even have to pay income tax if the powers that be and people in charge actually got us what we deserve for our resources. But it should be an option.
Well, Corey's obviously been saying this on our podcast for quite a while. Punters is talking about this quite a lot, and it's becoming a bit more mainstream that our country has been absolutely rorted by our own government.
We must be a joke to these other countries. Honestly, they must just laugh at us and be like, how weak are these guys? Like, they're just handing it over and we're profiting.
We should be receiving money back for the resources that come from our country. Instead, they're taking the money from our income and then using it. So this is they're giving tax breaks and their subsidies to these international corporations coming in and just taking our country's profits, and our royalties are next to nothing.
It's disgusting. Well, one of our policies is actually to put a 15% licensing fee on our iron ore exports. So the government has dropped a debt bomb on us and future generations of over $1 trillion. And in my opinion, I'm not seeing solutions from either of the minor parties about how that's going to be addressed. It just seems like they're going to be borrowing more, and we have to pay interest on that debt too, by the way.
Do you remember when we laughed at America for having over $1 trillion of debt? Now there's fucking escalated.
Yeah, like 36 trillion.
We've got it now, eh?
I know, exactly. Like that, and that is...
When did we go over $1 trillion in debt?
It's insane. And that is for like our children, our grandchildren, all these future generations. Like, that is such a burden for them to bear. So we need to have a plan to pay that off. And I think this 15% licensing fee on iron ore is a great one. Like, we can pay off our debt just using that. And that's obviously obviously majority, it's like 700 million tonnes or something a year is exported to China, and they turn it into steel, and then we buy it back for ridiculous amounts. But, 15% to them is a drop in the ocean, really, because they need to get it from us.
Yeah.
So, let's look at that so we can pay off this debt, and then let's focus on getting our country back on track.
Yeah, that absurd fear that if we would put these taxes or these royalties up, that they're going to leave and stop taking the billions of profits. No, like Norway is the perfect example. They did it. Everyone said, no, we're going to leave. What did they do? They did it and they stayed. They're like, well, we're not going to walk away from billions of profits.
Exactly. You've got to weigh it up here.
We'll just pay a little more extra tax, I guess. Oh, well.
Exactly. Or they'll make it up somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's like we have people who are actually experienced in doing international trade deals, which, let's face it, Peter Dutton and Anthony Albanese don't really come from backgrounds where they're experienced in these sorts of things. Have people go to the negotiating table with these people then and just come up with a plan, and be like, we're not accepting this anymore. This is what we're offering, and we show some strong leadership and start getting some of those royalties. The gas one is obviously a great example. I'm not an expert in those fields, but obviously you've had some people on who are, and Punters Politics has done a great job of highlighting that. I mean, I think his views are a bit more left of mine, but his message is great.
Correct.
He's really increased awareness.
100%. And then it doesn't just stay in the lane of resources. I mean, we look at Pfizer, for example, the tax that they paid, they still paid some tax, but they move it to Ireland so they pay less tax. Like, this is absurd.
So wrong.
And that sort of stuff, instead of it being called out and them held accountable, they toe the line. The people in power, they turn a blind eye because they're survivors. I think Trump talked about it on Rogan's podcast, about these people that maybe look at that and go, that's fucked. That's disgusting. But I can't say anything because I'll lose my position and the ability to have this impact in this area. I know that's what happens because I do believe that a lot of the politicians probably go in with the best of intentions and still maybe even it's a delusion that they feel like I'm still going to have a better impact if I just turn a blind eye to that and move over there. Maybe I'm being too optimistic with some of these people, but like that stuff needs to be called out, and not just called out, something actually needs to be done.
Yeah, I know, I fully agree with you. And I remember speaking to Craig Kelly when I was doing the United Australia Party stuff and Malcolm Roberts as well, and they're telling me that they're walking the halls of Parliament, the halls of Parliament House, and people from those other parties are coming up and patting them on the back and saying, we agree with you, keep going, like we fully support you. But once they get in that room, this is all behind closed doors stuff. Yeah. And I experienced that in my own electorate where our federal member was supporting all the small businesses saying, I don't agree with the mandates, none of this should be happening, saying it all behind closed doors. But when push come to shove, he would not say that in public, and I lost a lot of respect. I thought that was a bit weak, and that's what goes on. But I understand that maybe people are doing it because they feel like they can do some good, but that just should not be happening. It shouldn't be allowed.
What if you were to run for like a Liberal or a Labor spot? Is that something you can actually have an impact from within? Is that what Rennick was trying to do?
Well, yes, Rennick was actually trying to do that. And I think that Senator Alex Antich in South Australia has actually been a really good example of that, because I don't know if you've watched much of his stuff, but he's pretty outspoken. Yeah, he's one of the good guys. And he's certainly built up a membership base in South Australia who are more of the like-minded, like dragging them back to that conservative side rather than being Labor light. So, yes, I actually think that you could do some good within by getting people who are like-minded.
Because that would be difficult.
And because people have dirty taste in your mouth of like becoming a member for one of those. But
would you almost be open about what you're doing? Look, if it like let's say I'd go, I'm going to run, and my best bet to try and get in is to actually run as a Liberal or whatever. Like, I'm not going to. But if I was to do that, or any person who wants to do that, but I'm just telling you all now, I'm doing this so I can create change from within.
Yeah, and I don't know how that would go, because obviously they have their pre-selections from the members, and I don't know, because they've got a party line and they,
Or would you just go, I'm doing this in secret, you get in and then go, right.
Guess what? Boom.
Bringing in the Elon kitchen sink.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I don't know.
Does it make an impact though? Like, is that how Rennick has got in?
I think it potentially could, and that's probably just another strategy. I think just getting some differing opinions and voices in there is going to make a huge impact.
I guess that's the only way you can,
because we can
it?
keep them accountable.
Yeah.
Well,
and then that's exactly right. You won't get another chance if you'll be voted out.
Exactly.
If you don't do what the people want.
Yeah, and I think that's a hard thing too about people that just keep running and running as well, because the longer that you are in that position, and maybe the power goes to people's heads, I don't know, or, they're kind of owned by their lobbyists and whatnot. I think the longer you're in, the harder it probably is to keep doing good once you're stuck on the wheel and, you've made a promise to do something to get it kicked back later down the line. And maybe I'm being a bit cynical here, but
I don't know. I think you.
Yeah. I feel like I'm on the money a bit, but I feel like there's just so much corruption, and I just think it's I don't know how we really get in and expose all of that, but I just think getting the right people in Parliament House is key. And this is really our only method to fight back. And that's, I think, the thing now where, Aussies like to get around the underdog and support people doing it tough. It's like, well, you're in every single Australian, pretty much every Australian right now is doing it tough in some way because of decisions that have been made in Parliament House. So let's invigorate that Aussie spirit and get behind some of us who are the underdogs and support us. Because, really, look at what's happening. Could we? I don't think we could make it worse, right? Like, I don't think we're going to make it worse. Yeah. I think we can only make it better.
Yeah. And currently, like in WA, we got like Roger Cook and Labor, and you see the disingenuous side of, especially him being the health minister and withholding all the science that it was, all those decisions were based on. Like, if the science was so clear, then why is it redacted? Yeah, why can't we see it? And so now he's in power, and something as simple as being so disingenuous around, like we just had the National Athletic Championships in Perth and did a big post about it. Wasn't there? As far as I could see, wasn't there. I checked. I was like, what were you putting up all these posts saying how good gout?
Invite him to come on the podcast.
Yeah, I've don't worry, I've reached out.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Nothing. Like, we don't get nothing back. I'd love to have someone on like Roger Cook. I'd love to have, I know Baz in a couple of ways through the football club that we both played for. So potentially I could get someone on like him. And clearly we're not going to agree on things. But, I think getting on these sorts of people, I'd love to have Dutton or Albanese on. And I don't want to hear your policy talking points. I want to have a chat. I want to see what you're actually like. Are you just a fucking dick that's just saying what you're supposed to say? And like Albo yesterday putting up a post about Volkanovski trying to play off his success and saying, we're all behind you. Like, we see what you're doing, mate. It's see-through. And it's fucking stupid.
And that's the thing too, how I was saying, is I think that the Australian people really are actually craving that authenticity and someone who's just genuine and is just going to be, a straight shooter. And I feel like people like them are afraid to come on podcasts where you do just have an actual yarn because because they don't want to misspeak, or, they're so trained now to spit out slogans.
Well, this is why Kamala didn't go on. It's like, so here we're talking, look, we talk hours and hours. Every fucking day we're doing an episode. Well, not every day, but we do 2 or 3 episodes a week. And sometimes you lose yourself in conversation. Like, I've done it earlier before. I was like, where was I? I was able to come back to it and, create a succinct and eloquent response to
without a teleprompter.
Exactly. If you are trying to run the world, I get that sometimes put on the spot, you're going to run into circles and things are going through your head and you've got a lot of information going. I get that. I understand. But that's going to happen here and there.
Yeah.
Not every time you have a fucking conversation with someone. Someone asks you a simple question and you're trying to navigate in your head, all right, this is why they get messed up and they get run in circles. They're going, right, what can I say right now that doesn't get me in trouble for something else later on, instead of just saying what they actually think. Yeah. And if they actually, and this is why Trump gets himself in a lot of trouble, but also he says what he thinks. Yeah. And sometimes you're like, oh, you're a fucking idiot, mate. And then sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to run in circles trying to navigate what he's allowed to say and what he's not.
He just says
it. So this is why he's actually able to have these conversations. Whereas Kamala, she probably, do you know what? If you actually probably wanted to have a good conversation with Kamala Harris, for example, you probably could if she didn't have to toe all these fucking lines about what she can and can't say. She gets herself in a mess. It's like, how can I word this? What can I do?
What policy
I've got
can I
my
link
talking
it back
points.
to?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this wasn't an approved question.
Exactly, yeah. So
pre-prepared answer.
if you just got back to these people when they didn't have to think about what they're trying to say instead of just speaking, which is what we see with Trump.
Yeah.
They're going to say some things that are wrong sometimes, but that's authentic, and that's better.
Exactly. And we're all human, and I guess that's always the thing about even I had so much anxiety about coming on, even though I know that we would have.
Great.
Thank you, but even though I knew we would have a good conversation, I was like, because I like to think that I have a good sense of humor, and I will joke about things that I'll laugh at jokes that are politically incorrect and things like that.
Well, Debbie's not here yet. So
I know. I was like, well, it's probably good that it's just you and I might get myself into trouble laughing at jokes that I shouldn't laugh at. But that's one of the things I think now. I feel like everyone's so concerned about being politically correct, not offending or making a joke, that you make a joke about something that's clearly a joke, and then all of a sudden it's blowing up in the media that you have said something horrible. It's like, that's not what I said at all. It's just that was the culture that I was brought up on, is to just not take it so seriously. And I think that's the thing that I love about Clive too, because he is a larger than life character, and I've obviously gotten to know him personally, so I know the human side to him, and that there's like a whole other side, and I really wish that other people could see that, and the heart that he has for people and the Australian people, and obviously I would love to get him on here at some point, because he just to have a chat with him. He's hilarious. He has such a good sense of humour.
And he was meant to come on Thursday, but that's not going to work for scheduling, I don't think now. But I mean, fingers crossed, we can maybe
we can make something happen.
But the fact that and this is why, and I was saying to you prior to the pod, like people like Clive Palmer or we've got Babbitt or the Malcolm Roberts, the Rennicks, who are big players within the political landscape of Australia. The fact that they were going to come on our podcast, it's a bit fucking.
It's so cool.
It's a bit trippy. It's a bit weird, but I don't think it's. I don't think it's unexpected anymore, because that's where the people are listening.
Exactly.
For what the person is like. Yes. Again, if Clive came on, I'd probably ask him a few policy things, but I want to know what he's like. Fucking don't give me this fake bullshit version with talking points. Give me your policies and why Dutton's bad and why Albo's the worst and why Labor's going to be better and why. I don't want to hear that shit. Tell me what it was like growing up as a kid. Tell me what it was like being a dad through COVID. Those sorts of things. That's what I want to hear.
His story is so interesting too, about what he's overcome and how he's gotten to how he is, and so I hope that he can come on one day and tell that story, because you guys have such a good yarn.
I want to ask him about the Titanic.
Oh, I know. Well, apparently the shipbuilders who were going to do it, went into insolvency or something, so they're having to source someone else. But hopefully, maybe you'll get an invite.
Mate, the fact that he wants to build a Titanic is Titanic 2, or what is fucking hell?
He has all these. He's one of these people who's just like, he believes anything is possible. And it really is. And I think that you guys would really connect on that.
Yeah, and I'm sure, and this is where I look at my past views on people. Pauline Hanson, perfect example. Are my views on Pauline Hanson based on what I was shown in the news when I was a kid? And that's what I still believe now. And what I believed then, I have no idea whether it was true. Is she racist? I don't know. I don't know how it was framed. And going back and looking at it, no, she wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, my views on Clive Palmer, even as an older, and not as a kid, this is recent times, the last 10 years or so, seeing Clive Palmer in the news, are my views on Clive Palmer based on what the mainstream media was trying to paint him as? My first ever joke, as dull and bland and fucking hack as it was, is a dig at Clive Palmer. That's the first ever joke I ever wrote. Yeah. And
maybe you should tell it to him.
Well, I don't think he should hear that joke. But it's not the best joke.
Probably laugh.
Yeah, probably. But the fact was, I was going, right, well, this is a widely recognised person that's not liked by a lot of the country. For whatever reason, doesn't matter. I'm going to use him as the crux of the joke, because it's a thing that everyone can get on board with in that laugh. And that's what I'm finding is working best with comedy is obviously making it broad. Well, to a point. I'm trying not to be too fucking broad, but perfect example. And like I've painted my view on him back then, which is only 5 years ago. That first joke is
based
written.
on what you were being told.
Correct.
I know, and I do get a bit frustrated when people, you know, and I don't blame them, but you know, people who already have a distrust for mainstream media and then they form these opinions. I'm like, well, you've just said you don't trust the ABC and mainstream media. It's like, so where are you getting your information from?
And so if I'm to have a chat with him, I'm not making my opinions on him until I've spoken to him and then looked into other things and their voting records and what they do and what they say and what they do. And there's ways to look into people, I guess, but if you find they're authentic, whether or not they're going to be doing the right thing or the wrong thing, it doesn't matter. If they're doing it for the right things and the right reasons, then that's what matters. And
he's done some amazing things for Australian people that, you know, and he does these things often quietly behind the scenes. You know, he's not out there spruiking about it. So
now he may have done some fucking terrible things as well. But I don't know. Like I'm not going to make any assumptions on anyone anymore. I'm just really taking everyone as a blank canvas. Come and talk to me. Oh, no, that's a good person.
Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, that guy's a dickhead.
Yeah.
Oh, she's a fucking bitch.
Yeah.
Oh, she's a legend. Like, who knows what it's going to be
until
like.
you put them in the hot seat, right? And I think that's the thing too, is like, no matter what you think about Clive, like put that aside. No matter what you think about our name, any of it, like that is all irrelevant. Look at what we stand for. Look at what we're trying to do. Look at the quality of the candidates. Like, if you like what I have to say and you think that I'm all right as a person to represent you and you feel like you can put your trust in me, well, that's actually what's really important. And, you know, the leader of our party is actually Sue Ellen Wrightson. You might have seen her ads. And she's just an absolute gem of a human, massive heart, you know. And that's the thing, is that everyone who's in our party is, no one's a career politician. We're just everyday people, and we're all having a go at this. So a lot of people, they've never done anything like this before, but they feel like our country is important. The people here are worth fighting for. Like, you know, it's worth saving. It's worth protecting our Australian values. And, you know, so they're putting their hands up, and it actually does come at a personal cost. Like, you know, it's not easy. So I think just cut people a little bit of slack who are doing it, you know, no matter what team they're on. Just give it a little bit of credit to that, because it is really hard. And I never want to get to the end of my life and look back and be like, oh, that was boring. You know, I want to get to the end and be like, geez, that was a wild ride. Like, you know, so I'm grateful that I've had these sorts of opportunities. But we got to give people a bit of credit, because it's a big thing to stick your hand up and do it.
Yeah. Having a bit of discernment based on your own personal experience, not what the media machine pumps out. I think like we're seeing that change now. And mostly now with the rise of social media and its influence, hence probably why they're trying to put these sorts of social media bans in and misinformation bills and whatnot.
People's accounts.
Well, they're understanding that the mainstream media is not their weapon anymore. It's becoming
irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly, to the independent journalists and the podcasters of the world, and they don't have control over them. Some of them, I'm sure they do, but so now what we're seeing is a generation that has been, as I spoke to at the start of this episode, 16, 17-year-olds are recognising me from our clips, which means they're taking an interest in what we're saying, not what fucking Channel 10 is regurgitating on behalf of the Liberal Labor Party. Like,
exactly.
And so while my opinions are based on everything I've learned as a child up until now, I have to fucking start again and go, I have probably been lied to and manipulated and brainwashed to think a certain way. So I'm starting again.
We're all starting again, hey? And I think that's the beauty about being in your 30s, although we're kind of on like the other side of 30s now, right? But it's, you know, you've learned, you've got that life experience behind you too, where you are starting to question a lot of things, and it's almost like a reinvention and becoming really firm in your sense of self, and it's guiding those people who are younger to try and navigate that for themselves, and not teaching them what to think, but how to think, you know, like how to critically think and have that discernment for themselves and trust their guts. And, you know, like I'm such a big believer in that, like that gut intuition. It's always been so strong for me. And there's been a few times in my life where I've had like that full body, and I don't know if you know what I'm talking about here, but it's like that full body, and the only way I can say it is to curse, which is like that full body fuck yes.
Yeah.
Like this overwhelming sense of like, this is the thing that is right for you.
Yeah.
And so I've had a couple of times in my life, and one of them was when I ran for UAP. I saw the thing where they were calling for the advertisement where they were calling for candidate nominations back in 2021, and everything in me was just like, you have to do this. And even now I was a bit more reluctant, but it's, you know, it's sort of part of the journey. I'm completely unattached to the outcome of what happens. You know, I hope that people can see that I'm genuine and see my heart, but, you know, I'll keep on going as my other path as I was, you know, regardless of the outcome here. But, you know, whatever it is, it's, you know, it's part of my journey, and I'm where I'm supposed to be. I think, and that's how I've kind of always lived my life, is based on that, okay, this is what feels right to me, and I've got to go with that, even if that doesn't make sense to other people. And some of the decisions I've made certainly haven't made sense at the time. But as the process and the journey unfolds, they do make sense. Even just moving to WA was huge. So my partner's, he's a serving member in the Navy. And so obviously he couldn't move. He's got 2 children as well. And our story is really cool. I think it's awesome. We actually met on this big group trip to Thailand about 12, 13 years ago. Yeah. It was like this massive friendship group, and myself and another friend tagged along. And, you know, I hadn't met him before. We all met up in Thailand because we'd all sort of grown up in the same hometown. Everyone had dispersed and they'd gone their different ways. A few were police officers and different ones in the military and things like that. And we sort of hit it off and had this connection then. But, you know, I was living in Toowoomba, where, by the way, all of his family and my family still are. Our parents have become friends since we've got together. They live like 8 minutes drive from each other. Super cute. And, you know, the timing obviously wasn't right then. And then he was over visiting family in end of 2023, I think it was. Yeah. Yeah, and he was over visiting family, and he asked if I wanted to catch up, and I was like, yeah, cool. Actually, it was end of 2022, and then we planned this overseas trip because we'd obviously, you know, we knew we were good travel partners, and then and then by September 2023, I had friends moved into my house, and I packed up my car, and my parents road tripped all the way over to WA with me from Queensland. And
wow.
Here I am. And it was just everything in me was like, you have to make a go of this.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty cool story. And I only found out just a couple nights ago, my dad's staying with us right now, that we were almost neighbours as kids as well, because my parents nearly bought this block of land next door to them.
Like those moments where you're like, why didn't this happen? Why isn't it happening? Why isn't it working? And I truly believe that those sorts of things happen and they are delayed, because if you got it then, you wouldn't have been in the position to be able to hold on to whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job or a position in politics or whatever it is. You would have fallen into old limiting self-beliefs, or you would have
You're
created
not the
same
person you are now.
Correct. You might have idolized the income instead of the actual project that you were working on. Yeah. You might have idolized the person that you were with instead of the actual feeling that you got of freedom and peace that you gain when you're with them. So your perception on everything is completely different. And if you had have received that job, if you had have met that person, if you had have got that position in politics, then you would have failed. And so I believe that is the divine setting you on the path, saying you're not ready. But when you're ready, you'll get it.
Waiting for you. Yeah, and my partner and I have had this discussion a lot, because we're like, imagine if it had happened then, but we're like, it wouldn't have worked then, because we aren't the people that we are now. And obviously we navigate things. I mean, you knew what it's like with the whole, custody arrangements and things like that. And so, like we navigate that, and we navigate that well. And, he and I it's almost like we were raised by the same people. So our values are very similar when it comes to how we, parent. And for me, it's step parenting, obviously. Yeah. But it's great. And I really fully believe that, everyone, it all happens when it's meant to happen,
Correct.
And if we get detoured or something doesn't work out for us, it's really hard in the moment. But once you can get beyond that and you just accept it you can see why, I feel like I can look back on my life a lot and be like, I understand now why that door was closed for me, because the next one that opened was even better. Or that's, the journey. We just got to trust and accept, I think, that we don't really have control over a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, you just got to sort of think, if it didn't happen, what am I not learning right now? What am I not in? What am I not letting in? So I truly believe that like the podcast now is working in the right direction, and there's things happening at the moment that are like I never even planned that was going to be a thing. I didn't even know that was an option, and that could have happened 8, 9, 10 months ago. But I wasn't in.
You weren't ready.
I wasn't in a secure place. I wasn't in this balanced mindset of like, you navigate with what you're trying to put out there, what message you're trying to deliver. And if I wasn't confident with what I want to be doing right now,
the message gets lost.
Last year, if this happened, I would have been fucking all over the place. Like my message would have been in 4 different directions.
Yeah.
The message and the direction is clear now.
Yeah.
So I don't have to worry what happens now. Now everything can come in, and that's why I believe everything's coming in, because now I know where we're going. Mm-hmm. Before I didn't.
Yeah.
So
you weren't the person that you are today. You weren't in a position to be able to accept, what was ready for you. So you've had to walk this path and walk this journey to get to where you are now. Yeah. And that's how I feel about what I'm doing now. This is part of my path. I asked for this, even though it wasn't. I got it. I'm like, well, do you know what? Message received, and I'm gonna give it all I've got and do my absolute best. And I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I've navigated a lot worse, and I've been through. We've survived every hard day so far, right? Yeah. So I think bringing that to the table is huge.
I think that is all I can take from like my journey, and like a journey like yours, or the people I see everywhere around us. Like I see them on their path and where they're at in certain levels of their journey, and all you can do, I think, is at the time, no matter what part of the journey you're on, is just give your best, the best that you can at that time. Yeah. And if your best is nowhere near your best, but it is at that time, then that's all that matters, because you're going to keep working in the right direction. And maybe it could be funny, because I'll look at someone and I'll go, oh, I recognize I was there. But then is there someone who's a lot further along in their journey that looks at me and goes, oh, I remember when I was there? Yeah. And that's exciting to know, like, where does your path go in your self-development? And I think all you can do is present the best version of yourself at the time that you can. And if that is a person with problems, or if that is a person with flaws, which we all are flawed, or if that is a person with limiting self-beliefs, at the time, that's all you can do. And then you can work on that day by day.
Turn around and just give those past versions of yourself a big hug too, because you were only doing the best you could at the time with what you knew, with the life experience you had, with working through all the traumas and the self-beliefs or limiting self-beliefs that you have. And like, it's not a linear journey. It's not, a start and an end. It's like unpeeling layers all the time, and there's always going to be things that come up and challenge you. It's just like how you tackle those. And if some days all the best that you could do was just get out of bed and have a shower and that's it, well, do you know what? Like, that's okay sometimes, but we've got to then, pick ourselves up and keep going. And there's always a better day on the horizon, like the icky parts don't last forever. And I think you have to go through the icky parts. You've got to have that polarization, because if everything was just, bliss all the time, you wouldn't appreciate those moments the way that you do when you go through the hard stuff. And getting to that goal, like where you guys are kind of at now with the podcast, which is amazing. But if you hadn't started where you started and it was just handed to you, you wouldn't have that appreciation that you have now to look back and be like, holy shit, like, look how far we've come. And I think that's true for most people's journeys.
It's really strange looking back, and you can only talk to yourself, but like I look back on and realize, fuck, like how sad was I? didn't realise. I probably put on a good brave face, and I probably didn't even know I was sad. I didn't feel it at the time, but like more compared to where I am now, and you're like, this is real. The journey there is. There's almost like a mourning for that person.
Yes.
Of this, and we talked about uncomfortable change before. You know,
shedding the skin.
Shedding the skin is fucking uncomfortable, and
it's brutal.
And you become attached to this version of yourself that got you through difficult times, and the people and the community that you built around you to help you get through those difficult times. And when you start to not need that anymore, there's a nostalgia or there's a mourning for what you built around you, that strength that you built, that community you built, and letting it go because you don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
It's great that you can draw on that strong person again if you really require it. But I mean, you know, to my own story, I'm not in a place where I need that guy anymore.
Yeah.
This is more of a like I'm open to the infinite now.
Yeah.
And it's sad letting go of those people that helped me. But that's just part of the process.
It's a journey, isn't it? And I think that's the thing too, is it's like is holding those former versions of you and people who might have been in your life then but aren't now, like holding those memories well, and you know, like being thankful for that, and
thankful,
then just being thankful. And I know there's all the Instagram things about being grateful, right? I mean, there is a lot to it, but it's a, you know, it's a lot more simplistic when it comes down to it. Is just looking for glimmers. If you're having a rough day, just looking for a small glimmer of hope, like a stranger smiling at you, or you know, it's so easy to, I guess, focus on the tough things, and but it's like there's actually a lot more beautiful things in the world than we Well,
Delby once said on this podcast, and it ended up being his quote, he was trying to fool me, but he said that the dimmest spark can light the darkest room. And I agree. Just takes a little bit of light that you shine becomes infectious. And it can help others see their own light, I think.
Definitely. And I think having these conversations is so important because, you know, and it can see, you know, to look at, you know, some of the things that we're doing, it seems, you know, unattainable at times to other people, particularly what you guys have managed to achieve with the podcast. But it's like sharing the story of where we started to like where you are now. You know, it's so inspiring, and I think people like to hear that.
Well, this is it. We're both, like Delby and myself, being as authentic as we possibly can. And like our guests are, you've been the perfect example of that today. Instead of pushing policies and all that, you've just come on and talked about what you think about things. And I think I'd like to see more of that from politicians. Not a politician, let's see the person. But you are here talking about running. So is there anything you want to plug before we finish up? Because I think this has been a bloody incredible episode.
It's been a great chat. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that my nerves dissipated quite quickly.
It's good.
So I think just, you know, if you like what I have to say, then please give us your support. You know, I think most people can agree that they're pretty unhappy with how things are going. We are actually an amazing third option here. You know, there's some really good people putting their hands up, whether, you know, Trumpet of Patriots, you know, we're blasting the message pretty loudly. I'm sure people have seen the ads. I think one of my main election promises that I do want to make to the people is that come May 5, I promise you will not see our advertising anymore. So if that's a good enough reason to vote for us, then give us your support. But just please, I just encourage everyone to please start looking at some of these minor parties. Educate yourself on the preferential voting system. It is a good system. We can make change. There's some really good people putting their hands up. So just give them the support. And if you're someone who is a vote boycotter, but you really aren't happy with how things are going, like this is your chance to stand up for the people. This is your chance to have your say. This is the system that we have, and I understand why people don't want to participate in it, but I'm just asking you to please take 10 minutes out of your day. You can do it at an early voting centre. Please just there's a lot of us that are standing up for you, and we do want to be your voice. So please just get behind us, because we're willing to make the sacrifice for this. So I know I understand people's beliefs around it, but this is our fight back method. So let's give it everything we've got, because And, and I will be frustrated if people come to me after the election and, they didn't get out and volunteer to help some of our candidates. Don't come and complain to me about the results if you didn't get out there and do something to make the change, because if you want to see the change, you've got to be part of the change. So let's get that Aussie spirit fighting.
I love it. That's you've given a very good representation of yourself. Thank you so much for joining us.
Having me.
And
so happy to be here.
Yeah. Cheers for the chat.
Yeah, it was so good. Loved
Cheers.
it.